Hello and welcome to Doubles and Trebles. Darts is back on the 27th of January. It's the Masters from Milton Keynes, the top 24 in the world. It's a non-ranking event, but that doesn't really bother me. There's plenty to bet on. Obviously, competitive games. 16 players in round one, and then the winners of those face the top 8 seeds in round two. And there you go. Quick fire, over 3 days, short format to start with. And we've got, the top 24 following the World Championship. There's obviously a lot of players in form playing in this tournament. Really looking forward to it, Pie Man. Are you?
Yeah, always like the Masters start of the season. As you say, top quality field. Look, we're only in the 11th edition of the Masters, a fairly new event compared to a lot of the PDC calendar. And it's a bit of a strange one, really, because it was dominated by Michael van Gerwen, as a lot of events were in the middle of the last decade. He won it 5 times straight. But in recent years, we saw a format tweak a couple of years ago where they expanded the field from 16 to 24. And intriguingly, in those 2 renewals of the 24-man field, we've seen much more surprising finals. You may remember Mervyn King playing Johnny Clayton a couple of years ago in the final, where it was announced that the winner would be put in the Premier League. Johnny Clayton goes on to beat Merv and goes on to win the Premier League. So the rest is history, really. That was a launch pad for Johnny Clayton's career. Then last year, same again. Joe Cullen playing Dave Chisnell in the final. Joe Cullen winning, getting in the Premier League. And he missed a dart to win the Premier League as well. So what we're seeing now is we've seen a little bit of a shift in the Masters from a kind of almost an exhibition-y type feel with the usual suspects into it's a genuine platform for one of these players in the mid-tier to go and win a full-strength event, potentially parachute themselves into the Premier League, and the sky's the limit from there. So I think whatever you think of the Premier League, this is a really intriguing event now because it's got a new dynamic to it that it could be a surprise winner.
As a result of it being a non-ranking event, Pie Man, I do hold that against this tournament, and it is not a major in my opinion. I know we have this conversation many times throughout the year. Not every TV tournament can be called a major, and the Masters, unfortunately, isn't one of them. Anyway, we'll move swiftly on from that. You do get some surprise results, Pie Man, particularly in the last couple of years, and particularly after the expansion in number of players, because basically a lot of these guys won't have played many darts since the World Championship. We don't really know which ones because they don't really tell us. But yeah, they've had that little Mickey Mouse tournament in Bahrain the other week, of which the likes of Van Gerwen didn't play in. So yeah, plenty to look forward to. Disappointment. We're 8 days away, or 7 days away from the start of this tournament, Pie Man. There's been nothing for 3 weeks, and the bookies haven't got it priced up. We've had the field confirmed for over 3 weeks now. I think that's a disappointment. So as a result of that, we're going to be back next week or in the coming days with a bit more of a betting preview. I'm just going to scroll down to the draw there, Pie Man. Anything stand out to you at this stage? Let's take the first round. Obviously, there's some good games in there. Who is drawn in the first round do you think may make it the furthest?
Interesting question. Look, I think we've got to go on what we know from the last 2 years. I've just said about these players that are sort of trying to get into the Premier League, and I'm more than happy to focus on the sort of cluster of 4 or 5 players who maybe aren't in that Premier League lineup now, but could potentially get there if they win this event. In the ilk of Cullen and Clayton, our last 2 winners. And I think if you look at that first round selection of players there, I think Dirk van Dijvenbode, if he was to get a win here at the Masters, could well force himself into the reckoning. I think the winner of that top game, Damon Heta and Ross Smith, will be thinking, if I can go and win this event, that would get me in. And they're going to play Michael Smith in round 2, the newly crowned world number 1 and world champion. But I do think there's a little bit of an angle there that, playing in that first round and winning in the first round in a high quality encounter, you are playing the seeded player and you're almost catching them a little bit cold. You know how we see these big players come in for their first game before Christmas at the World Championship, and it can sometimes be that they're not firing on all cylinders. I think that can very much be the case here. If you're playing a game on the 27th of January up on that stage and, averaging in the high 90s towards a ton, you're going to come into that game full of confidence. And no, I wouldn't be ruling out any possibilities in this tournament, really. However, I think, we have to be honest and say that bottom section of the draw, the bottom quarter, if you will, with MVG and Rob Cross, I wouldn't really be hanging my hat on any of those 4 I call them unseeded, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Jose Clemens, Dimitri Anderson. I wouldn't be rushing to back any of them against MVG and Cross. I expect MVG and Cross to meet in that quarter-final at the bottom. I think that the third section is a little bit more intriguing, although Callum Ridge, you'd have to say, is out of form. James Wade is out of form. Chizzy will fancy his chances here, a finalist last year, and you know, he won't be overawed by facing Ryan Searle and Peter Wright. So that's potentially intriguing. Although, again, Johnny Clayton back to form at the World Championship. So, you know, he'll be quietly confident of a run here, having won it 2 years ago. He clearly likes the format, likes the tournament. And then up at the top, it's all about Gerwyn Price and Michael Smith. But Danny Noppert is another man who I think will be thinking, if I win this, they can't leave me out of the Premier League. He's a major winner, a major finalist, perhaps not the most you know, aesthetically pleasing player or a sexy profile of player. But, you know, at the end of the day, if he plays good darts, he deserves to be in the Premier League. And you're never going to struggle to sell a Dutch player in the Premier League, especially when you've got a couple of nights in Rotterdam and Amsterdam, etc. So I think if Noppert wins this, he can have genuine claims to be in that Premier League. Nathan Aspinall's an interesting one. I've seen a few people naming their Premier League lineup, suggesting that they think Aspinall will definitely be in it. I'm not so sure about that. I mean, he's been in a lot of finals and he's had an extremely good year. He has been in it previously, but maybe he does need a run here. You know, if he goes out first round to Stephen Bunting or Danny Noppert beats him, then I think Danny Noppert would be pretty aggrieved to be overlooked for Aspinall. So, yeah, a lot of interesting dynamics here. As I say, I'm more than happy to focus on it. And I keep getting drawn to that top match between Damon Heta and Ross Smith. I think whoever wins that will really fancy their chances of catching Michael Smith a little bit cold. They're both capable of going with him on the 180s. It's a relatively short format. You know, in the first to 10 legs, you'll have a break at, you know, after 10 legs. So when it's 6-4 or 5-all or whatever. And yeah, you know, you're not going to need much to catch these big players off guard. So it's an intriguing heat. It's a shame we haven't got a betting market to look at. I think that is probably partly down to the fact that we have another one of these kind of, dare I say it, tin pot tournaments at the weekend. We've got the Nordic Darts Masters, so maybe bookies are just holding fire to see who wins that before pricing up. But really, let's be honest, Nordic Darts Masters should not be having an impact on the forming of this market.
Yeah, it's lazy, I think, from the bookies. We do praise them when they deserve it, and we criticise them when they deserve it as well. Michael Smith's been on a whirlwind, obviously. He's won that World Championship, fantastic. But he's forgot, apparently, he forgot to take his phone charger, his
darts,
stems, and his flights. Yeah. So he's got his darts, but not stems and flights. So he's still on a whirlwind. But yeah, you just don't know how that's going to impact him. He said he was going to continue to play his schedule as normal, and he has. Bahrain and Nordic on the way to this.
Won the Bahrain final. It's worth saying for anyone that didn't watch that. Beat Gerwyn Price in the final. Funny old final, really. Michael Smith racing into a lead, and then Gerwyn Price will probably feel he should have won it. To be honest, he got it. You know, he got it back within. Well, he missed darts to go within a leg and throw for the match, and yeah, he just cut a frustrated figure throughout Price because he'd looked really good in the quarters and the semi. But then just a slow start in the final. And, of course, them two potentially meeting in the semi-final if they get that far. So, yeah, look, we don't want to get too carried away about predicting the winner at this stage when we're still waiting for the markets to form. And then we can probably have a proper dig in the betting preview. But, yeah, that would be my overriding message. Do not discount a surprise winner here. It is a tournament that is consistently throwing up surprise finals, surprise winners now.
Oh, because everywhere you turn, there's good games, and you know I normally come to look at outright bets on the basis of you know who can stop them. Well, you could make an argument for anyone being stopped by anyone else because there's such a hard draws. But like you say, relatively short format. Possibly some rusty players, possibly some tired players that have been to Bahrain and wherever they are this weekend. So yeah, the one I'm at, well, top of the market. I think you're going to be looking at Van Gerwen. Favourite 11-4, followed swiftly by Michael Smith.
I actually think Michael Smith might be favourite. You know,
I don't know if they might be joint favourites. And then I think you're in Price, who's lengthening all the time at the moment until he wins one. Peter Wright, obviously, we know what's going on there. Not a lot in conclusion. So that brings me to the one I would be interested in, possibly a whopping price, and it is all about price when we get those prices. Ryan Searle. I think that. He did bugger all for most of last year, but as normal, turned up at Ali Pali, was involved in that cracking game. Remind me who it was against, Pyman? So was it
Ooh,
Clemens?
you put me on the spot there.
It was. I think it was Clemens. But
he had a very good game at the Players' Championships finals against Sturkvad Divenbode, didn't he? That's the game that sticks in my mind, where it was like almost a record-breaking affair.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you're right with Surly. He came to life at the back end of the year, and it's not the worst part of the draw to be in, is it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, so I'll be looking there. But in terms of a winner pie, man, who would you be looking at this stage before we get the all-important odds?
Well, I mean, I can't get it out of my head that Van Gerwen will still be hurting from that World Final, and for someone who's won this tournament 5 times out of 10 renewals, it wouldn't be that much of a shock to see him do it again, would it? And he had a great 2022, but I think ultimately he'll have left it with a sour taste in his mouth, thinking that it was a disappointment because he didn't get that world title. And we know that Van Gerwen reacts fantastically to adversity. So he would be my idea of a likeliest winner. But as I say, up at the top, if I was saying a surprise winner, I think Michael Smith still, as you say, that very hectic schedule of playing the Worlds, and in the the Bahrain Masters and the Nordic Masters are going to have that exhibition-y feel to them where Smith can just enjoy being the world champion. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes and wins the Nordic Masters, this weekend as well, because he's still on the crest of a wave. But suddenly this is serious business in it, and we know that whoever wins out of Damon Heta and Ross Smith are going to be extremely fired up for that match, because it's a potentially huge match in their career. I do genuinely think if either of them two was to win this tournament, that it should be in the Premier League. Whether they would be is another story. I think Ross Smith probably would, given he's got European Championship as well. So yeah, I think it's a really tough test for Michael Smith in his first round draw. That would be the part of the draw I would maybe focus on, but we'll save that for the betting show.
One thing we have got to mention, Pie Man, and one name we haven't mentioned yet, Gary Anderson, your favourite, said at the Worlds that usually he just turns up at the Masters having not picked up a dart for a month. But this time, he said in 2023, he's going for it. He says he'll be doing plenty of practice with Searle, and he said he'll be fired up and he'll be ready to go. He honestly did say that. So he did. So yeah, look out for Pie Man tipping up Gary Anderson at 40-1 next week.
Yes, yeah. Keep an eye out for that. No, in all seriousness, it'll be a watching brief for Gary Anderson. But God, we would all like to see him get back to those levels, wouldn't we? And he's still got it in the locker. Like, some of his performances at the back end of the year were exceptional, but just the consistency is lacking. And I would worry in this tournament about, an important element we maybe haven't mentioned here. The quarters, semis and final are played on the same day. And you do it's a bit of a sprint to the finish. It's a long all day. If you're playing well, you can kind of ride that momentum. But if you're not, you're going to struggle to battle through 3 straight matches on the same day. So, yeah. Another interesting element to it, but it's always a great tournament, and it really kicks us back into the darting calendar, because then beyond that we have the Stafford Players Championship events, and it all just gets up and running. The Premier League will be ticking along in the background for anyone that's interested, and yeah, it's a new dawn, isn't it?
Yeah. Right, we'll be back next week with a proper betting preview, but that's the first look at the Masters. Thanks for joining us. Thanks and hello to the new subscribers, and if you've not already subscribed, make sure you click that button.